ready to go live. We are going live. Well, it says live, and now it's counting down. Not exactly sure. Sometimes the NFL and fantasy football makes you feel like that. Yeah, man, I understand. Sometimes fantasy football and the NFL makes you feel like this. What would you say you do here? And sometimes, well, it's just sometimes. It's the Audible. Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund Bloom with part one of the week 4 recap here and counting down Seattle and Miami. 31-23, the final score. Actually thought it might be a little bit more for Seattle. We'll get into all that. And Chris Carson getting banged up, but performing well before he was banged up. Russell Wilson always cooking, always eating well and looking good. 360 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT. DK Metcalf, 4 of 406 in this day. David Moore, 3 for 95 and a touch. Tyler Lockett, only 2 for 39. Oh, Greg Olsen, 5 for 35. Don't know if you'd be starting. Probably not. But anyway, there's your Greg Olsen update. Chris Carson update is 16 for 80 and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Awesome. 3 for 20 as a receiver. Helpful. And then he gets banged up. So, Bloom, let's talk about the latest with Chris Carson. Let's talk about these Seattle Seahawks who had a fairly easy day and one that you thought, man, 35, 40, like 31-23 is like, oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this was one where Russ cooked, and also reminiscent of the games when Russ didn't cook, he had to do some things at the end. But you see, you get the road win, and this defense certainly had been beleaguered for the first 3 games, so it was good for them to get on track in this game, more of a bend but don't break defense. But Russell Wilson did break the Miami defense, and this is where we're at with Russell Wilson. Sees 360 and 2 touchdowns. That's a yawner. That's just a ho-hum day
Right.
for Russell Wilson.
Really,
Really,
that's like part leftovers and part
Yeah.
cooking, right? Like, so
Yeah.
he did the cooking, but he did a little shortcut there.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't your best bake. 360 and 2 touchdowns is just kind of it was an okay day for Russell Wilson. A lot of it to David Moore on a busted coverage. DK Metcalf was actually Tyler Lockett kept off the board for a while in this one. So the Dolphins secondary, even without Byron Jones, doing the best they could to contain these excellent receivers for the Seahawks. And you take the good, you take the bad with Tyler Lockett. He won your week for you last week. You saw some Greg Olsen targets in this one, but nothing too exciting to speak of. Chris Carson running hard, getting 2 touchdowns, left what looked like a concussion, tested for a concussion, re-entered the game. So you see they have a bye coming up in week 6. Next week, Minnesota coming, by the way, so we'll certainly expect a lot out of this offense. Again, a 31-point day, disappointing for them, but not a disappointing day for the offense, for the defense, as Ryan Fitzpatrick tried to keep up, kind of kept up, but really ran on fumes at the end.
Ran on fumes at the end, but boy, he did his best, which includes a couple of interceptions, right? But a rushing touchdown for Ryan Fitzpatrick, 315 yards passing, 2 INTs, no passing TDs, rushing TD. That helps. It helped if Myles Gaskin or Matt Breida would do more. Jordan Howard with his normal 2 for 2, but not with the touchdown. So, all right. Hey, Lynn Bowden got in the game as well. But Devontae Parker, big day for him, 10 for 110. Isaiah Ford follows him up, 4 for 48. Matt Breida, 3 for 39. Jakeem Grant, 3 for 36. I'm talking about guys that aren't doing much of anything and guys that you didn't even roster. But you may have had Preston Williams, 1 for 15 in this contest. So, the countdown to 2 is still there, regardless of how much Fitzpatrick is trying.
Yeah, that's the thing. Fitzpatrick had been playing really well the last 2 games, and this game reminds you that Tua was waiting in the wings. As if Fitzpatrick had gotten a win, pulled him to 2-2, got the upset over Seattle, maybe we would have been thinking about it, him staying the quarterback for a while longer. But you got San Francisco next week, and then you got Denver, Chargers, Rams, Arizona, Jets back-to-back around a bye, a Week 11 bye. It feels like the bye. We will see Tua, but it's still fun to watch Fitzpatrick. He had an INT to start things out, then drove them down for field goals, but couldn't really finish. It was Devontae Parker helping him move the chains all day. Remember, this was a Seattle defense already giving up a lot through the air. And then Jamal Adams is out for this one. Quentin Dunbar is out for this one. You're really expecting a lot from Fitzpatrick statistically. DFS lineups, looking for a quarterback. If you're weighing him against like Patrick Mahomes, wondering about what's going to happen tomorrow with that game. It didn't really work out, although you said the rushing touchdown as they were trying to come back at the end helped. big duds here from Preston Williams, Mike Gesicki, who just catches one ball. You were expecting them to put up big games. Even Myles Gaskin, in PPR leagues, he wasn't a total bust, but you're seeing the limitations of this offense because this was a defense that had been very generous for fantasy football, and then going to face San Francisco, another defense missing some pieces, but a defense that still can play well. And Miami, still on the rebuilding track. They kept this one close. It was 17-15. If they had taken some of those field goals, turned them into touchdowns, they would have had a chance. And that's something for any team facing Seattle. You can't settle for field goals. Mike Zimmer next week, you can't settle for field goals against Seattle.
Yeah, tell that to Gary Kubiak. So, hey, Jaguars and Bengals up next. Congratulations to Bengals fans. The stupid tie. What was it? IDP? What show was it, Bloom? I heard my ears were ringing, and you're like, Cecil hates ties. And I'm like, yeah, I hate him. And Joe Burrow, man, congratulations. It's so much fun to watch still. Through to 33-25, of course. Bengals get their first win. Joe Burrow gets his first win. Let's talk about the Jaguars side of things first. And, well, if you started Gardner Minshew, got 27 of 40, 351 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT. It was all the DJ Charks. And then some, 8 for 95 and 2 TDs for DJ Chark. Laviska Shenault getting 5 for 86 in this contest. Keelan Cole, 4 for 46. And then you had James Robinson in as your running back, 17 for 75. You're definitely going to take that. And then 4 for 32 as a receiver. So a nice, full day, not a touchdown, but don't get too greedy. So Jaguars, they did put up that fight, but it was Cincy charging hard in that third quarter, mainly Bloom, that makes all the difference. Burrow gets that win. But let's talk about Minshew and company first.
Not as close as it looked on the scoreboard, but for fantasy, we can extract out of this Cincinnati defense, still a defense we want to target. Remember how good Cleveland looked against them. Next week, by the way, it will be Baltimore getting that Cincinnati defense. But with DJ Chark, this offense comes alive. Now, some of it is, again, playing Cincinnati when Cincinnati was nursing a lead, but we're looking ahead with Houston up next week for this Jacksonville team. Maybe they're not going to be a plucky team that sneaks into the playoffs or continues to pull off upsets like they did in week 1, but they are going to create fantasy value in Minshew, but especially in Chark. And Cease, watching Chark, because I really think that he was more of an athlete than a polished receiver as a second-round pick.
And definitely with the speed. That was his main attraction, was that speed.
And he's got subtlety and nuance and play strength. He's not just a go route, go up and get it guy at all. In fact, the value he's adding is not in this game mainly from his speed. It's things like unbelievable footwork. See, you can see the toe drag, right? I mean, the toe drag is one micro part of an evaluation of a receiver, but when a player can do a toe drag, not just in a frantic way, but in a way that shows that the game is just happening slower for them. And that was Chark on the touchdown. And also he outfought someone for a ball for a touchdown. You also saw actually Burrow give up an interception on a similar play with Miles Jack. Lose Miles Jack in this one, by the way. He gets hurt. The other thing you like to see is Laviska Shenault coming on, getting targets downfield and converting them into production. So we're going to talk about Dallas, Cease. We're going to talk about these offenses where the pass offense is at least functional and has some good players, but the defense is not. Jacksonville, especially in the pass defense, C.J. Henderson got hurt in this one, fit that. And also James Robinson, by the way. Unlike Myles Gaskin, James Robinson, while his team is struggling, still putting up some solid numbers. Not numbers like last week when his team was getting blown out, but enough to make you feel good about leaving him in every week against any competition as your running back too. But especially next week against that Houston run defense, you're going to love having James Robinson, and you'll love watching this Jacksonville defense put up numbers. I'm sorry, the offense put up numbers.
Bloom, what do you always say? Like, any advice you give is always for yourself first.
Sure.
That's what I feel when I think of this next thing, because I was going to have this conversation with you probably off air, but I was thinking about Noah Fant and just kind of how there's still some bad habits from last year that come around, but there's so many people, and myself included, of course, that will get caught up in this is who he is. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, some guys you get to that point, you can say that. But these young players, I'm willing to give a receiver 3 years. I'm willing to give a tight end 3 years. because you can learn those nuances. You can become more of a professional. It's just one of those reminders, right? Like when you watch Noah Fant and he's better, still needs to be a little more physical sometimes, but like you watch DJ Chark and he's better. There's countless number of young players that like we can't categorize them as like this is all they are, right? Russell Gage, you know what I mean? Like he's not Russell Shepard, ladies and gentlemen. And sometimes guys are like that, where they're just, well, that's who you are. You're just going to be an athlete in the NFL. And it is, as Matthew says, inside the Audible. That's right. Bengals side, Joe Burrow, 300 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 INT, and it was all the Joe Mixon that you can handle. How many people benched Joe Mixon this week, right? How many people were fed up? They're disgusted. They're mad. And he goes 25 for 151 and 2 touchdowns as a runner. And then he gets the receiving touchdown and 6 for 30 as a receiver. Huge day. Tyler Boyd, 7 for 90. T. Higgins, 4 for 77. So much fun. Drew Sample getting something. 3 for 47 in this contest. And AJ Green. AJ Green was a wrist injury, Bloom, right? Mm-hmm. I get a little banged up, and also a catch for 3 yards. He's just not, cue the Chuck D, right? Yeah. Can we say that? We already said that on him. Just a reminder, if you had AJ Green. Oh, I still have AJ Green. Yeah, you don't need to, especially when it's all Joe Mixon. And, man, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins are fun to watch, too.
Yeah, quite an epic game in some ways because there were fans there. Joe Burrow's first win at home. And, again, it's a new era for this Bengals franchise. Everyone's feeling good, right? Mixon just got signed, so he's feeling good producing a day like this for his team. The team is feeling good paying him. Burrow wasn't as battered and knocked around as in previous weeks. And again, you see it with Burrow. He shows up basically right out of the womb in the NFL, ready to play. Mentally, spiritually, emotionally, ready to play, ready to negotiate the pocket, ready to negotiate pressure, and make some things happen. And if anybody, like you said, in this epic picture of the Bengals rising like a phoenix from the ashes of last year, you've got A.J. Brown, who's just in the ashes. It's a shame. I mean, we hate seeing that. In some ways, in fantasy, it can be an Achilles heel of mine to want to hold on to that greatness until we see it. I think a lot of people were projecting that trajectory to bottom out, and indeed it has, as Green doesn't have much left to give. Tyler Boyd has a lot left to give, had a touchdown wiped off the board. T. Higgins looks good. And T. Higgins, man, he's tight end sized. You'll mistake him for a tight end, but then
I mistake him for Cortland Sutton, Bloom. I just pretend. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah,
I'm feeling so chatty, but I just pretend like that's Cortland Sutton, and I love watching him. So yes, you would mistake him for a different position.
Well, and he's fast enough with that size, but you can see him moving. You can see Burrow's going to be able to give him chances to win the ball in the air with that U-train. Again, Miles Jack had a terrific interception. He wrestled it away from Drew Sample, and Sample made a few plays, but he's not a premier receiving tight end. And I think you saw that on that play where Miles Jack has been having a good season, moving back to weak side linebacker. He leaves this game with an injury. Auden Tate, not really part of this, but interesting game for Cincinnati next week because they're feeling their oats now, Cease, right? They got a win. They're having some things come together. They've got a few players on defense that are blossoming into difference makers, guys like Sam Hubbard and Carl Lawson. Going against Baltimore, and it really doesn't feel like after that opener against Cleveland, they haven't really hit their stride. So I think that there could be some wrinkles to this one as the Bengals finally get over the hump, and I think we're all looking forward to the Burrow Bengals.
Yeah, looking forward to when Minnesota looks like this because there's enough there for the main guys anyway, and when they can hit and they can beat up on the Texans 31-23. And is it bad that part of me loves when Bill O'Brien loses? Is that bad? Is that wrong? Am I wrong?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can't stand an unhinged head coach like Bill O'Brien. 31-23, the final score. Kirk Cousins, 16-22, 260 yards, 1 touchdown, no INT. The 1 touchdown to Adam Thielen. He's back. He's around. He's there, everybody. 8 for 114 at a touch. Justin Jefferson, rinse, repeat, not the huge monster stats, but still 100 yards, 4 for 103. Yes, please. Nothing for anyone else's receiver. Dalvin Cook, a couple of catches, but Dalvin Cook also a couple of rushing touchdowns, 27 carries, 130 yards. Makes me hiccup because I'm full, right? I'm full of Dalvin Cook. You're full. Alexander Madison, My name is Alexander Madison, 7 for 17 and a rushing touchdown on the day. So Thielen, Jefferson, yep. Cook, you bet. There you go. I don't know if you had Madison as a what the heck flex, but this is how Minnesota wins.
Yeah, they get a win. Okay. I mean, it's against the Texans. For a little bit, this game looked like it was going to be just futility, just punt, 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 punt. And it's an interesting way to watch this experiment play out of 2-0-3 teams, two underachieving teams on offense, but also underachieving teams on defense. If you put them together, are we going to see an offensive explosion? Or are we going to see more offensive futility? At first it was offensive futility, and then Minnesota started handing the ball off to Dalvin Cook, and Dalvin Cook is so good. It's just so good. When you're watching Dalvin Cook, I don't know how many there are on the list, but it's a short list where we're watching a great player playing at their peak. And that's what we're watching. And in a situation, a scheme that asks them to do things that show the best parts of their game. Dalvin Cook looking really, really good. Adam Thielen still very good. Highly, highly skilled receiver. And what Thielen gives you in this game, and it is Houston, but he makes you feel better about starting him because you've seen some garbage time high. Now you saw high in a game that wasn't a garbage time game. And then Justin Jefferson, a lot of LSU talk, Cease.
Right.
Justin Jefferson, and you can see it, Cease, and it's something that I think Kirk Cousins, dare I say, it's going to work out well, Rick Spielman, that Jefferson is adding some of the same things that Diggs gave them, which is throw the ball up, let him go make a play downfield, and he's going to make the play. He's going to give them. He wasn't really truly a vertical receiver. He didn't have a vertical receiver profile, like, say, DJ Chark. But he's giving them more of a vertical downfield element. And like you said, there's nothing else there. Poor Herb Smith. There's nothing else there for anybody in this offense. But in a day like today, when they're facing an inferior defense and they can dictate how the game goes to the opponent, they can get the win. And again, next week against Seattle, they're going to need this offense to keep up. You're not going to be able to settle for those field goals. In this one, they hold on the defensive side. But on the Houston side, Cease, I mean, this just feels like Malkovich. You've seen Being John Malkovich.
Of
like
course.
The scene where everyone's Malkovich. It's like the GM's O'Brien, the head coach's O'Brien. O'Brien put himself in as a play caller this week to try to fix the offense. Probably the owner's going to bring in an outside consultant. It's just going to be O'Brien in a disguise, telling him they got to keep O'Brien. It's not his fault, I think this was a resounding game to show, yes, trading away DeAndre Hopkins, replacing him with David Johnson, Brandon Cooks. No, it's not going to help him. It's not going to help spending money on Randall Cobb. It's tough to beat Deshaun Watson.
It's tough. And there is an episode of The Boys, Bloom. Mm-hmm. You're probably not watching The Boys?
No, not yet.
I would guess. Okay. I won't spoil it for you, but there's a scene, and this is a big sorry, Joe. But there's a scene where Homelander is very interested in something that Homelander has to say. That's very Being John Malkovich. So that's Bill O'Brien, ladies and gentlemen. If you've seen The Boys, you better laugh with me because you know exactly what I'm talking about. We're naughty. Deshaun Watson is so damn good, and he's stuck with Bill O'Brien. I hate that. 300 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no picks on 20 of 33 passing. Will Fuller, start him as long as he's not hurt. 6 for 108 and a touch. This is what you get. Kenny Stills, 2 for 39 and a touch. Jordan Akins, 3 for 46. He got banged up in this one too, Bloom. Yes. Okay. We'll break that down. David Johnson, 16 for 63. Some hard-fought yards there for David Johnson. 2 for 29 as a receiver. That's enough. If you started him, I mean, it's our low end RB2 flex level. So, and nothing else from Randall Cobb, 2 for 36. Just not much else there for this Texans team as they're struggling to find their way. And way starts with W. So does win, Bloom, because they're struggling to find that too.
See, we could have looked at these matchups against Kansas City, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. Said, okay, Kansas City's defense we underrate. Baltimore's, maybe a tough matchup for them. Pittsburgh, Watson did something at least, kept it close for a while in that game. This is Minnesota, though. And on that play where Jordan Akins goes out with concussion, Harrison Smith is ejected. Kind of the college targeting rule take on a play there. So Harrison Smith, the linchpin of a secondary that's always relying on young corners, whether it's the backups to the young corners or the young corners that they've had. And it was bad. It was more bad jazz. And it's just, watching a game plan a game plan-less offense. I mean, it's just watching an offense where you can tell there's just no structure. There's no identity. There's no sense of here's where we can win. Here's how we draw up route combinations and play designs, and here's what we do well, and here's how we have a playbook that allows us to do those things. It's frustrating. From a fantasy perspective, okay, Deshaun Watson in these futile comebacks. By the way, they did drive the ball down 8. They had a chance to come back in this game. And they had shots at the goal line. And Will Fuller had one that he tried to bring in one-handed. Ball moved when he hit the ground, and that was that. So Deshaun Watson's still furiously, in a testament to what he can do, and also how Minnesota's defense is still a defense that is not necessarily going to be able to rise to the occasion. The numbers came. The numbers came for Fuller, but not for Cobb. And Cooks disappeared, and we're coming soon to shut him down. And Cooks might have next week against Jacksonville. He might have 5 for 150 or something, but obviously week to week it's going to be a nausea-inducing ride. They missed DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, they didn't have when you don't have a structure to your offense, but you have DeAndre Hopkins, a structure just manifests, right? I mean, it just organically grows, and we'll talk about that when we get to the Arizona-Carolina game. You just want to throw Deshaun Watson a life preserver. What you want, if you're a Texans fan, is just to hit reset, and you almost want the hiring process for the new head coach, or at least the new offensive coordinator, to be run by Deshaun Watson, and just find the best match for him and go from there. This is not working. See that Jags-Texans rivalry next week.
Bloom, it's almost as if Deshaun Watson needs someone like Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
Who we already had, who hated Bill O'Brien because raise your hand if you like Bill O'Brien. Seriously, anyway, it's never personal. So says Odell Beckham Jr. today. Wow, 49-38, the final score. How about them Cowboys? Oh, Jerry, 49 is Cleveland, 38 is Dallas, 3-1 is Cleveland. And 1-3 are the Dallas Cowboys. Baker, the baby maker, 19-30, 165 yards, 2 touchdowns, no INTs in this one. And Jarvis Landry getting in on the action as a passer with a passing touchdown, 1 for 1 and 37. Oh, those trick plays. So Jarvis Landry, what do we say, Bloom? If he can't get it done against this team, he's not going to get it done. We got 5 for 48 as a receiver. He got that passing touchdown, which you will get credit for. Okay, good job. Let's keep that up. All this excitement is keeping me from crying. I'm crying inside like a winner because I'm thinking about Nick Chubb. We'll get to that in a little bit, but let's talk about ODB. 5 for 81, 2 touchdowns, and also the big run, 2 for 73 and 1 rushing touchdown. That's so spectacular. Kareem Hunt comes in, gets a couple of rushing touchdowns, 11 for 71 on the ground. Dearness Johnson gets 13 for 95 in this day. By the way, Austin Hooper had 5 for 34 and a receiving touchdown. Harrison Bryant, 4 for 37. So 9 catches by those tight ends on 11 targets. So just, interesting to note. And then we get to Nick Chubb. You got the latest there with that knee injury, 6 for 43 on the day on the ground, which led to Dearness Johnson doing more, Kareem Hunt doing more, etc. So it's a big win, exciting time for the Browns, and the best running back in the league is now banged up.
Yeah. Glass half full. They're 3-1. Glass half empty. They lost Nick Chubb. And for a while in the second half, they were missing him. Epic game. And we've watched this game already once this year. It was the Dallas-Atlanta game. Very entertaining.
With special teams stuff at the end, too.
Right. Very entertaining for fantasy football. A very entertaining game to watch the Browns. Again, first game of the year, they get ignominiously swept aside by Baltimore, division rival. And since then, Kevin Stefanski, the blueprint of this offense, showing success. And what we had in this game was Odell Beckham putting his stamp on a game, and Cowboys fans flashing back to Odell Beckham the Giant, who usually was excellent against the Cowboys and making games out of matchups that maybe the Cowboys had on paper. And I don't know how this matchup played out on paper, but again, it gets away from the Cowboys early, and the Browns pull away. But the Cowboys make it interesting at the end, and it's actually an Odell Beckham. And it's fascinating, Cease, right? Because I think that if Nick Chubb doesn't get hurt, this is a ho-hum end of this game, right? Because Nick Chubb, you just don't want to be tackling him in the third and fourth quarter with his team up 27 points or whatever it was. But without Nick Chubb, they were having trouble getting off the field. And I think so we're going to see this all year, right? Is Dallas's defense is so bad and teams are going to develop such big leads against them that they are going to get complacent in the second half. And just like that with this offense, if you're complacent, the Dallas offense, you're going to be in a tight game. So Chubb running the ball well, he goes out, he was pass protecting, actually got rolled up on by Tristan Hill, the same player that did that roll on Chris Carson last week. So he'll showing up now in a bad way with these injuries. And Dearness Johnson comes in, he looks good. Talk about him on the waiver wire show. I don't think it's going to be a long-term injury for Chubb. We'll see. He was ruled out during the game. Kareem Hunt looking good, finishing those drives, and Hunt obviously is an automatic start, running back one, while Chubb is out with his offense functioning so well. Jarvis Landry is still more of a short-range receiver, but did throw the touchdown to get things going, and that's how you knew it was going to be spicy. To get things going, they let Landry throw the touchdown, which, by the way, is part of the story of even against Dallas. Even when you score 49 points, Baker Mayfield's not going to be a good fantasy quarterback. He's just not going to be a good fantasy quarterback this year. Even Austin Hooper. Okay, you get like a 15-point game from him because he scores a touchdown. Harrison Bryant, Matt Waldman favorite, looking good here. But it was all about Beckham. Beckham making plays downfield. There was another hold that was missed, or he could have had another play earlier in the game. But actually, as they're missing Nick Chubb, and now the Cowboys have made it 41-38. So it goes from 41-14 to 41-38. And you can feel it in the crowd there in Dallas. I think they let 25,000 in today, so I hope those people are okay. Take care of yourselves if you're at the Dallas game today. You see, okay, in Kevin Stefanski, we're watching. Remember those fake punts against Baltimore week 1? Come on, man, really? Right. This is your big role. I'm finally head coach. I can call fake punt whenever I want. But he calls an end around to Beckham because you could just try to run the clock, get them to use timeouts, whatever. And Beckham does his thing, almost gets tackled like 15 yards back from the line of scrimmage, and then turns it into a touchdown. And you feel the Browns exhale. And that's why you trade for a player like Odell Beckham. It's because in a big game like this, in a big moment, he can put his stamp on it. He put a lot of fantasy matchups, put a stamp on those in this one. And I think this is a game that, Cleveland at the end of the game, like it's team bonding. You did something together. You accomplished something. It tested you. It tested your belief in yourself, and you pulled through. So if we stop tuning into this Browns team, they're now 3-1. They have a win, a signature win, going into a game against the Colts. So really interesting AFC matchup next week. And I know a couple of years we went through this with Browns fans. Jared, hey buddy, everybody out there, get excited. Even Nick Chubb hurt. I think you can see Kevin Stefanski's got the ship going in the right direction.
Yeah, just get excited, and it's legitimate. You can do it. All right, Dak Prescott, you talk about putting stamps on. Is he putting stamps on his postcards to say goodbye to Dallas? What are quarterback wins worth, right? Ooh, well, he's putting up monster numbers. 502 yards passing, 4 touchdowns and a pick today. Amari Cooper, 12 for 134 and a touchdown. CeeDee Lamb, 5 for 79 and 2 touchdowns. Dalton Schultz, 4 for 72 and a touchdown. And Michael Gallup, 2 for 29. Yeah, it's about the only part that's not working. And Ezekiel Elliott could do a hell of a lot more. This is what you talk about when they go down early. The Cowboys go down early, so Zeke gets 12 for 54 on the ground. Tony Pollard, by the way, had a rushing touchdown. Zeke did get 8 for 71 as a receiver, so in PPR leagues, that definitely helps out. But you could have seen how things would be differently, but rush game is tied to a defense, and where defense is a sieve, and you can't stop the run, you can't stop anybody, you're not going to be able to run the ball as well as you want. Thus, big days continue for Dak Prescott.
And the big days, again, watching this team, a lot of the numbers coming when the game is out of hand. But in this one, see, at the end of the first quarter, Dak Prescott had 174 passing yards. He was on pace for 696 passing yards through the first quarter. He had 2 touchdowns in the first quarter. So this was a game, because talking about this game going into the week, it's like, well, is this going to be a game where Dallas, because Cleveland's defense also has problems, by the way. The first touchdown to CeeDee Lamb, there wasn't anyone else even on the screen with them. They've got problems. Social distancing in the secondary, Cease. There's a 2020 joke for you. You saw then And of course, Joe Looney goes out in this one. Remember, Lyle Collins had, I think, hip surgery, so you're not going to get the right tackle back this year. Myles Garrett putting his stamp on this game also. He had a sack to shut down a drive early. He had a sack strip fumble to help expand this lead. And so if you're Dallas on offense, you don't have any margin of error with this defense. And they had errors. Zeke had a fumble in the first half. And just like in that Atlanta game, they ended up down. Zeke did enough, but Tony Pollard getting a touchdown at the end of there. I think that, see, if we take it outside of contracts and draft pedigree, there's an argument to use Pollard more and Zeke less. It's not to take away from Zeke. It's just that Pollard adds a little more slippery, explosive element than Zeke does. And this is not a team that's going to wear down opponents, There's going to be game scripts where Zeke gets to 30 carries and they win a game like 21-17, even though they lost 2017, almost won to open the season. And by the way, can we just say for a second, the Cowboys are still probably the best team in the NFC East. I know.
Keep your chin up, Jerry.
Yeah, right.
Or get another surgery to push it back up.
Yeah, and I mean, what's Mike McCarthy going to do to get this team's attention? What's Mike Nolan going to do to get these teams' attention? So anyway, Amari Cooper, by the way, on pace through 4 games. Another thing to say, through 4 games, we can start projecting things. We check things out. I don't want to use the horse racing term because I think the Porter poll's like a quarter left.
The quarter poll's at the end, yeah.
Yeah. 4 games in, we can start making some observations. 3 1,000-yard receiver pace, plus Dalton Schultz in his starts is on a 1,000-yard pace. So well over 6,000-yard pace for Dak Prescott. A lot of that garbage time. So we're not saying it's going to sustain that. It's just a picture of this offense. CeeDee Lamb with his first big game, but oh no, Michael Gallup. And I think the thing with Michael Gallup is, 1 out of every 4 games in this offense, maybe more frequent than that, he's going to give you a week that can put your team over the top. But he can also give you these small weeks as we've been seeing from him. But not Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz in this passing game, he's an every week start going forward. And I think it's just, again, every week I'm going to say it. He's Blake Jarwin. Oh, what Blake Jarwin could have done in this role. Dalton Schultz isn't going to do as much as Blake Jarwin, which should tell you how valuable that Blake Jarwin was going to be this year. Big showdown. Giants coming next week. NFC least football. Catch the fever.
Catch it. Big battle in our nation's capital, Baltimore and Washington, and Lamar Jackson going, it's 31-17 the final score. I mean, not that I wonder if Baltimore won. No, of course they didn't beat Washington. 31-17 final score. Lamar Jackson, 193 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT. Here comes RG3. He throws a pick in for Lamar Jackson. 7 for 53 on the ground for Lamar Jackson, 1 rushing touchdown. The 2 passing touchdowns, just when I thought, and the Colts game before we jumped on, Bloom.
Yeah.
Mo Ali Cox. We always say Ali Cox, but yes. Mo Ali Cox. Ali with an I. Mo Ali Cox. I was contemplating him or Mark Andrews because Mandrew hadn't been getting it done. He got it done today. 3 for 57 and 2 touchdowns. Thank you. Marquise Brown, 4 for 86 in this contest. And then not much else from anyone else. Mark Ingram with a rushing touchdown. But, interesting day, easier win.
Yeah.
Let's try some things. That's the type of day it was for Baltimore.
And not a satisfying win. I mean, it's a win that they should get. It's a win that should be easy for them. It basically was. I think with Lamar Jackson, you still feel like there's room to improve. And from a fantasy perspective, you feel that way too. He broke a 50-yard touchdown run. He hooked up with Andrews a couple of times. And Washington wasn't going to push them for him to do any further. So 25, 30-point week. These, again, just like with Russell Wilson, 25-point week is a honor. Okay, that's it. Just 25 points. Well, I guess we'll take it because the competition didn't push them and because Lamar Jackson's missing some deep throws. He also had an interception in this one. You had that delicious moment, Cecil, of Robert Griffin III coming in to close out the game. There's some maybe little subtext there. Good for Griffin. I mean, good for him to be able to return to that field as a winner after how that organization, took his career and steered it off the cliff. No Ronnie Stanley in this one, by the way, but Washington's defensive line was banged up. Maybe we'll see Chase Young next week. Chase Young, by the way, is quickly getting on that list of players that you watch a game just to watch him sometimes, no matter how bad Washington is. You like watching Chase Young. You didn't get to watch him in this one. Ingram had a touchdown here, but otherwise this backfield hasn't got on track. Cease, again, indicative of how Baltimore is, the Steelers are definitely going to challenge them, and it feels like even though they've won a couple of games easily against inferior opponents, that Kansas City game really looms as a game where you see how far they have to go against opponents that are basically equal to them. So not much from J.K. Dobbins. I think that's something that needs to change. I think you got to use more J.K. Dobbins. I mean, all respect to Mark Ingram. Dobbins does things that Ingram can't. And Edwards does what Ingram can, but better. And just in a sign of where they are, Cease, they called a fake punt in the first half. It worked. Sam Cook makes the throw to Miles Boykin. It was 4th and 9. It was a perfect call for a fake punt, too, because it was 4th and 9 on the Washington side of the field. If it doesn't work, so what? I mean, you give up 20 yards of field position or something like that. It does work. But, you don't necessarily have to call fake punts when you have one of the best offenses in the league.
Right.
So, they can see that. Again, Cincinnati coming off their first win, feeling all full of themselves. Baltimore, on track to at least be a playoff team, but a team that can get better.
You ever have those friends that are in a relationship and they're like fighting with their significant other, and you're like, if you two just got along, it would be great.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about RG3 and Mike Shanahan. Because RG3 had his own, going into Shanahan's offense, I'm not running these plays.
Right.
Probably not the best way to approach things. But Mike Shanahan basically running you out of town on a rail. Probably not the best approach either. I think there's regret on both sides. Even though there is definitely still bitter feelings between Mike Shanahan and Robert Griffin III, allegedly, or whatever I got to say. Anyway, let's talk about Washington and their quarterback for now. I always feel that way with Dwayne Haskins. Is like, when are they not going to play Dwayne Haskins? But he had 314 yards today, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Okay. Sacked 3 times. Right on. Terry McLaurin, 10 for 118 in this one. J.D. McKissick, 7 for 40 on this one. Dontrell Inman, 4 for 29. And Logan Thomas, catch for 8 yards. Antonio Gibson, 13 for 46, a rushing touchdown. By the way, Haskins had a rushing touchdown as well. And then Antonio Gibson, 4 for 82 in this one. So maybe not. I keep saying it, Bloom, until it happens. There's a breakout week coming for Gibson. This one was a little closer to that.
Yeah, well, let's call it a breakout week. I mean, let's call it the kind of week that you see what he can do. He could have got another touchdown here. Haskins ended up sneaking it in later in the drive. But I think you've seen enough. You've seen enough that you're not going to leave Gibson on your bench. And sure enough, like a David Johnson, rookie year David Johnson, not as successful of a team, so the peaks might not be as high, but on any touch, and he's still raw as a runner. I mean, he looks like a running back who didn't get a lot of reps in college. But the physical tools are so ideal. And this isn't like Chris Henry, not that Chris Henry, rest in peace. The Chris Henry that had the amazing measurables that Tennessee loved. It was the year before they took Chris Johnson. At least they realized. See, the value to realizing they made a mistake and saying we made a mistake. And they go and they get Chris Johnson and everything works out. We don't even remember Chris Henry. But it's not just measurables for Gibson, though. It translates.
Are you thinking about Chris Brown from CU?
No. It was I can't remember where Chris Henry went, but he couldn't run. I think it was maybe Arizona.
This is how long we've done this show
I know.
for,
See,
right? It's like,
at a certain point, we better
Arizona.
watch out.
Mm-hmm. It was Arizona.
We're gonna watch out, and we're gonna show everyone just how confused we can get, like early onset football dementia, because we'll start. Oh, is that? But the point is that Gibson showed, and Washington did enough to get the ball to him in space, where his tremendous gifts and abilities show. And Terry McLaurin coming into this one banged up, tough matchup, still racking up numbers. The biggest question here was Haskins, and it was in the air all week. Ron Rivera put it in the air, so this isn't just media creation. Haskins has to play better, or he's going to get replaced by Kyle Allen, by the way. I don't think Alex Smith is ready. At least I hope that Washington sees it that way, and we don't find out in a kind of tragic way that he's not ready when they put him back out there. Haskins, I mean, he's in a different context. You'd say this is like a stepping stone kind of game. You didn't make any big mistakes. There's things, you see why he was a first-round quarterback, sometimes some of the skills or qualities he has. But you just think, next week it's the Rams defense. I mean, if you're saying that Haskins has to elevate this offense, you're giving him, especially with what he has to work with, Logan Thomas. By the way, Logan Thomas is coming to the shut him down segment. What's the ceiling that he's shown that we're scared of dropping him? It's a Haskins it's a McLaurin and Gibson offense. Maybe Kyle Allen soon, and you're hoping that Kyle Allen can do for McLaurin's value what he did for DJ Moore's value last year. But you can see admit you made a mistake, Dan Snyder. Haskins isn't the future of this team. Maybe Haskins will be a okay quarterback as the future of another team, or he'll be a backup that gets another chance eventually. But if you want to make the change, make the change.
Time, man.
Yeah.
Don't waste time. It's our most precious asset. And if you just change over, nobody will remember if you hit on the next guy.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they totally missed on that one first. Yeah. Arizona, right? Kyler Murray. They had Josh Rosen. They moved on.
Yeah.
By the way, Chris Henry was a baller.
Yeah.
He was, man. He was a freak.
Yeah.
And he got popped for suspension too, for prescription medication that was performance enhancing. We're enhancing your performance when we talk about the Saints and the Lions. That almost sounds like an ED read.
Mm-hmm.
Check out my friends at the men's clinic. 35-29. Drew Brees, 246, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT. He's getting up there in age. But the 2 touchdowns, Traquan Smith, it's there, 4 for 54 and 2 touchdowns. All right, Emmanuel Sanders, 6 for 93 in this contest. And Alvin Kamara, 19 for 83, 1 rushing touchdown, 3 for 36 as a receiver. Latavius Murray, if you had him in as a what-the-heck flex, 14 for 64 and 2 rushing touchdowns and a catch for 19 yards. And fantasy GMs sit there and wait. All right, Michael Thomas, we're waiting. Will you take a little Traquan Smith while you wait?
Yeah, Smith actually left this game, got a little banged up, had a big fumble recovery, and doing a decent Michael Thomas impression and doing it in the box score in this one. And maybe you were backing away from him after he was somewhat disappointing last week, looked good in his first start in place of Michael Thomas, and they got something good there. Traquan Smith should be on all dynasty rosters. Eventually, that's going to bear fruit. And, the kind of player that even if he doesn't get a big opportunity with the Saints during his rookie contract, I would look for a team to be projecting him as a starter down the line. Emmanuel Sanders with his first really good game as a Saint in this one. In the background, Cease, here's the theme for today's show, right? Bill O'Brien, still Bill O'Brien, doing Bill O'Brien things to mess up the Texans, the team that he was given the keys to. Maybe Matt Patricia, it's the Patricia Quinn show, really. But Patricia, he was a defensive coach. He was brought in to build this defense. What? Everything worked. Everything worked against them in this game. And this defense is just disintegrating in front of their very eyes. He's erectile dysfunction, as we transition to Drew Brees. No sign of that in this game, right? Because you don't have to push the ball downfield against the Lions. You don't have to do anything that is hard to do to beat the Lions defense in this one. This backfield ceases in this game, at least reminiscent of Ingram and Kamara, where there's so much to go around that you can start both guys. And Murray gets 2 touchdowns. And you like seeing Kamara celebrating for Murray getting those touchdowns. Kamara had those 6 touchdowns in the first 3 games, which should have showed you as a bottom line that this backfield can produce big numbers for running backs. And you knew eventually Murray was going to get his. It was in this one. Not that it was a disappointing game for Kamara, but he didn't single-handedly win the week for you. No Jared Cook in this one. I think there was a Josh Hill fumble. But more than, New Orleans offense looks good. New Orleans, they need going to keep pace with Tampa. It's the Detroit's defense looks bad. And Detroit's fans, you're just nodding along and saying, make it end. Please.
Right.
Let's see what new torture the football gods have in store for us. I'm tired of this one.
Well, it's not even funny anymore, right? It became sad and pathetic, and oh God, I guess we're just that team, and now it's just miserable. It's miserable being a Lions fan. 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, 206 yards for Matthew Stafford. Fine. Kenny Golladay, 4 for 62 and a touch. TJ Hawkinson, 2 for 9 and a touch. All right. DeAndre Swift getting 4 for 30 and a receiving touchdown, also 4 for 22 as a runner. Adrian Peterson, 11 for 36, hard charging yards. And ageless wonder, Adrian Peterson, 1 rushing touchdown. Fine. Do I have to talk about Danny Amendola?
Yeah.
Do I have to talk about Jesse James? And poor Marvin Jones Jr. It's just it's sad, Bloom. It's sad.
It is. And both corners, Janoris Jenkins and Marshawn Lattimore, out in this one. So you expect it to be a good game for Matthew Stafford. It was in a way, but there was no cup runneth over. There was any overachievers really on the Detroit side. And look, I should mention, by the way, Detroit got out to a 14-0 lead in this game. You had to drive right down the field to get an interception on a tip ball from Breeze. They score again, 14-0. All right. No. Stafford, again, last year for the first half of the year. He was good. He made Kenny Golladay very good. Marvin Jones was mostly a floor play and had that one massive game last year. But we saw that maybe this was going to be Darrell Bevell with this offense, a viable pass offense, but not so much here. You did see a Peterson touchdown. You did see DeAndre Swift catch a touchdown early. And look, Swift looks like physically he has the most to offer of the running backs in Detroit. But again, what good comes out of Detroit? What positive association do you have with Detroit football right now? So whether it's Golladay, okay, he caught a touchdown, but he isn't even coming close to returning what you paid for him. Or Marvin Jones, take advantage of this matchup, backup cornerbacks in. He did draw a long pass interference. And Danny Amendola did have a big 47-yard play or something like that early on. Hawkinson gets the touchdown after the Jones pass interference, but he gets a 2-point conversion, I think, in this one too in desperation time. But that's not what you were thinking when they took him 8 overall. I mean, he's not putting his stamp on. None of these players are putting a stamp on a game. Only Matt Patricia is putting his stamp on a game. And guess what? We don't have to talk about the Lions next week.
Yeah, awesome. You can't triple stamp a double stamp.
Yeah.
I got the erasey. I'm going to erasey because he's got the pencil in his ear. There. That should be part of the Audible drinking game. Me complaining about Pat Shurmur, Bill O'Brien, or Matt Patricia. They're kind of the same guy.
Yeah.
Kind of. All right, Cardinals and Panthers, 31-21. All right, Carolina getting that W. Kyler Murray. Let's start on the Arizona side of things. 24-31 passing, 133 yards. You heard that right. 24 of 31 passing, 133 yards. 3 touchdowns. No IT, did have a fumble in this one. Also 6 for 78 as a runner. Kenyon Drake's fantasy GMs are like, what was I thinking? 13 for 35 in this one. Chase Edmonds gets the receiving touchdown, 5 for 24 receiving touchdown, also 16 yards on the ground. Christian Kirk receiving touchdown, 3 for 19. Jordan Thomas, hey, they got him, the big man, former wide receiver. He's 280, 1 for 3 and 1 touchdown. Nuke getting 7 for 41 in this one, and Dan Arnold getting 4 for 39. So it's one of those where you go, Arizona, I think I picked them to win, to beat Carolina. And you look over things, you're like, you complete 24 passes for 133 yards. That's like 5 yards a pass? Like that's 4 yards a pass. Not good. It's not good.
No. And what a difference, even just in that first 4 games of the season, sees how our view of a team can change, right? Because Arizona comes out and they beat San Francisco, and our friend Eric Stoner would point out that they got some help from the refs in that game. I'd point out that Jimmy Garoppolo played badly. Not just that Arizona forced him into playing badly. He just played badly. But, San Francisco's that top of the heap team in the division, in the conference. They beat them in San Francisco, maybe not in front of a hostile crowd. And then they beat Washington the way you're supposed to. But now, Detroit, the Detroit team that we were just, goofing on, clowning, they lost to them at home last week. And now they go out to Carolina, and they're thoroughly outclassed. And we'll talk about how our view of Carolina has changed. But Kyler Murray, again, are we seeing development in him as a passer? Because we've seen some numbers. We've seen him successful throwing to DeAndre Hopkins. Does it sound familiar? Like Deshaun Watson, right? Like he's successful if he's throwing to DeAndre Hopkins. But you're wondering, how much did Murray progress as a passer? How much did he progress as a quarterback that has a structure? Cliff Kingsbury trying to set him up to succeed. His running ability, that he get a touchdown that was set up by a long run of his. And still, for fantasy, you're not disappointed with what you got from Kyler Murray. But as an Arizona fan, I think you're disappointed. As an Arizona fan, you're disappointed with this team. You're disappointed with Kenyon Drake. At least it was only 1-year contract. He's just not adding any sort of difference making to this offense. You wonder if we're going to see more of Chase Edmonds or something closer to a 50-50 split. 2 big buy low running backs coming in this week. Sees Joe Mixon, who did have the longer track record of being excellent through thick and thin with a terrible Cincinnati team, and Kenyon Drake, who we've seen flashes for parts of a season, but never for a whole season, never sustained. And he's not really even lighting the fuse this year. He did have some goal line opportunities, did get banged up in this one. DeAndre Hopkins, you got to imagine he's hurt. And again, here's that theme, right? If Hopkins isn't adding what he can add to this pass offense, you're going to get, what was it? today for Murray, like under 4 yards an attempt, not a completion, an attempt, which is just horrendous for Kyler Murray. You saw Christian Kirk get a touchdown, Dan Arnold a little bit more, but this is a little bit of a crisis game because Carolina's defense is a defense that you should be able to show the best side of your offense against it. And they were not able to do that. So now they're 2-2, but they get the Jets. Remember, Jets wanted Kingsbury. Kingsbury chose Arizona and said, good choice, Cliff. Show them what they missed.
Show them what they got. And Teddy Bridgewater showing with 276 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT. The touchdowns go like this. Reggie Bonifant with a receiving touchdown, and Ian Thomas with the other receiving touchdown, which means, Bloom, nobody got those touchdowns. Unless you had Teddy in as a second quarterback, what have you. You had Robbie Anderson in, 8 for 99 in this one. Curtis Samuel, 3 for 51. DJ Moore, 4 for 49. And then Mike Davis, 16 for 84, rushing touchdown. Teddy with the rushing touchdown, by the way. Reggie also with 53 rushing yards. And then, of course, see Mike Davis with 5 for 27 as a receiver. So there are a couple of backs that you picked up. James Robinson, 1, Mike Davis, the other, and you're happy with the results.
Yeah, you're very happy. And if you have Christian McCaffrey, it just hurts because you see how much this backfield can produce. And you're thinking about this when we're deciding who to start against Arizona in the future. I don't know if Le'Veon Bell will be back. Maybe I'd take a chance on him next week if he is back next week against Arizona because of the production that was there in the passing game and on the ground. Mike Davis with an outstanding game. And yeah, he's a running back 1 so far in PPR since he's been the starter. Even Reggie Bonifant in that Dearness Johnson mode where, hey, there's enough, even as a backup, to be fantasy relevant in this offense when things are humming. And Teddy had it humming. I root for Teddy Cease. I'm unabashed about it. I love seeing Teddy succeed. He was running well, distributing the ball well, and Matt Rule has this team ahead of schedule. Again, the Jets. This is all like 6 degrees separation from the Jets because they thought they could put together a staff better than Matt Rule could. I think Matt Rule is feeling good, and how differently we think about this team than, okay, they almost beat the Raiders. I think they got out-physicaled by Tampa, but now you have these wins to build on. The Chargers, they don't look like they're an easy out. And now this win against the Cardinals. By the way, the other thing you're going to take out of here, no safeties, top 2 safeties, Chris Banjo and Buda Baker, not necessarily in that order, out for this one. Isaiah Simmons still not really making an impact. Arizona facing the Jets next week. Carolina goes to face Atlanta, and going in with a hot Robbie Anderson, maybe not so much DJ Moore. Maybe this team being a winning team hurts DJ Moore because the attempts don't go through the roof, but against Atlanta, maybe they'll both get fed. And you can see this Carolina team go to 3-2 through 5 games ahead of schedule. Definitely not tanking for Trevor.
Doesn't it remind you of when the Bills were ahead of schedule and then took a step back in year 2 of Sean McDermott? Because as a head coach, like, you could really stink up the joint this year and be like, well, look what I had to work with. Same with Sean McDermott, right? And we're going to the playoffs, and then the next year it's like, oh my God, like, okay, don't keep up the good work. Let's and by the way, Matt Rule would love it if his career worked out like Sean McDermott is doing his thing with the Bills. We'll get to the Bills in part 2 of the Week 4 recap, but wrapping up part 1, 38-31, Tampa Bay gets the win over the Chargers. We have some injury news for Austin Eckler to go over, but let's talk about the kid, Justin Herbert, 20-25, 290, 3 touchdowns, 1 INT. Jalen Guyton in that speed, 1 for 72 and 1 touchdown. Tyron Johnson, 1 for 53 and 1 touchdown. Donald Parham Jr., 1 for 19 and 1 touchdown. So there's your TD, but not to Keenan Allen, 8 for 62. Not to Hunter Henry, 2 for 39. Or, Mike Williams banged up, so we're not thinking about that. You're thinking about who's running the ball. Justin Herbert was the leading rusher with 14 yards on the ground. So there's that. Austin Eckler banged up in this one before he exits, 2 for 12, and 1 for 2 as a receiver. Joshua Kelly, nothing, 9 for 7, just nothing. 3 for 26 as a receiver, next to nothing. So, all right, Justin Herbert continues to show well. They're not winning. Right. With the kid. It's not necessarily his fault, though, Bloom.
Yeah, they're 0-3, but it's not his fault. I think he's the reason they're in any of these games. And you're just seeing those gifts that made him the number 6 overall pick, the arm strength, the athleticism. He doesn't look overwhelmed. And remember, in this game, they already lost their center, Mike Pouncey. Brian Balaga, right tackle, out. Try Turner, right guard, out. Against a Tampa defense that is pretty fierce. And Herbert hung in. And what you're seeing here is a little down week from Hunter Henry, but I guess you'll tolerate that. Keenan Allen moving the sticks. But yeah, and for fantasy, maybe the lens we look at this through is, well, these were worthless touchdowns, right? But from a quarterback perspective of development, what you see is that deep arm coming into play. What you see is his ability to use some of these secondary receivers. So it's the deep ball to Guyton, the deep ball to Tyron Johnson, just called up from the practice squad, the deep ball to, not the deep ball, but the ball to Donald Parham, who's built like a skyscraper out there, 6'8", but he can also run. And, Herbert is going to be a solid fantasy quarterback, especially they're not going to be able to run the ball until Eckler's back. I just think Kelly, you see another fumble from Kelly. You didn't see much more from Justin Jackson in this one with offensive line issues. I just don't think they're going to get the running game going. They are going to New Orleans. Again, watching this team, it's the Chargers, right? See, we can change the coach, we can change the quarterback, we can change who's out there. They're a team that seems like they showed earlier, they can hang in with the best of them. But you never know what you're going to get. You're going to get a team that shoots themselves in the foot sometimes. You're going to get a team that also has some problems on defense that Tom Brady was able to exploit today.
Brady able to get it done with his guys and 369 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 INT. And what does Joe always say? Things change pretty quickly around here. Yeah. And I remember before the Broncos game, like Brady's offense. I had somebody tell me the Buccaneers offense doesn't scare them, who shall remain nameless because that's an embarrassing take, garbage toilet take, by the way. But Tom Brady, they're feeling it now, right? And I know the Chargers defense is banged up, but still, 369, 5 touchdowns and a pick. Okay, Mike Evans 7 for 122 and a touch. Scotty Miller 5 for 83 and a touch. OJ Howard 3 for 50 and a touch. Keyshawn Vaughn, yeah, him 2 for 22 and a touch. Cameron Brate 1 for 3 and a touch. That's 5. Justin Watson had 4 for 40, by the way. Gronk had 1 for 29. That's it. Ronald Jones, 20 for 111 in this contest. And the Buccaneers are feeling it and feeling pretty good with Tom Brady.
And by the way, Eckler, I forgot to mention, I think a hamstring?
Yes.
It looked bad, though. He didn't want to put any weight on the leg, didn't want to stretch the leg out, got taken off on the cart. I think we're looking at a multi-week IR hamstring injury for Eckler. Evans left this game briefly. Came back, and during the time he was out, Brady threw a pick 6. It was to Justin Watson, Michael Davis, who Evans had already beaten in the game with the pick 6 there. So the game wasn't really as close as the score might indicate when you factor in something like that. But Brady spreading the ball around. Evans, of course, is going to be an every week start without Godwin out there. This week it was Scotty Miller getting a touchdown. You saw OJ Howard go down in this one, I think an Achilles injury. Rob Gronkowski had a catch. Cameron Brate had a touchdown. If one of the top 2 receivers are out and you're still not seeing a lot of numbers to the tight ends here on a day when he throws for 369 and 5 touchdowns, it probably just isn't going to happen for tight ends in a Bruce Arians offense. Ronald Jones looked good running the ball. 3 drops, I think, in this one, Cease. So Keyshawn Vaughn, he's not in Ronald Jones' category in terms of physical talent. I don't think he's in Ronald Jones' category as a runner. He did get the touchdown, showed some toughness at the goal line on a reception. So maybe you see his opportunity in the passing game grow a little bit as maybe Brady getting a little tired of what he saw from Jones in the passing game category. But as long as this offense is still doing well, and it did well against the Chargers defense without Chris Harris, without Melvin Ingram, we're not afraid of this Chargers defense again facing New Orleans next week. We got a 3-1 team in the Bucs. Thursday night football against the Bears, who as of this moment are 3-0. See what they do against the Colts. Probably be 3-1. So the Bucs' first game of the year sees they come down to New Orleans and they lose. And since then, quietly, maybe that's why they like it, building towards a playoff chance for Tom Brady with a new team.
Just waiting for the afternoon games to wrap up, and then we'll be back right here on YouTube doing our thing. Make sure to do all those YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, share, ring the notification bell so you never miss a vid. Hoops and hoops and hoops and hoops, but we thank you. Thank you for doing just that. He's Sigmund, I'm Cecil. We're the Audible. Back with part 2 in just a bit. All right, later. Bye.